There's one question that I think that interests lots of us Americans because we're not advanced spiritually as they are in India and so forth. And there's a tendency in this country to associate the word spiritual with any person who has any kind of psychic experience, regardless of whether it's spiritual or anti-spiritual.
Well, I think one morning we have devoted to this question, is it not? In Life Divine, when we are dealing, I gave almost about 10 or 15 minutes quotation from Sedona about spirituality, definition of spirituality. It is there in your tape. He clearly showed 2 or 3 points which are important. The spiritism or spirit communication has nothing to do with spirituality. That is one clear thing. Asana and pranayam has nothing directly to do with spirituality. It is something to do with the nervous system and with the indirect control of the vital breath so as to promote concentration. That way it is a great help. But by itself it doesn't amount to yoga or spirituality. 2. Thirdly, there is an idea that spirituality must be connected with altruism, some ethical values, some idea of doing good, charity, and so on. That is also not spirituality. It only is a step towards real spiritual being, but it is not itself spirituality. It is in the mental realm, in the realm of idealism, or in the realm of ethical, outlook, which prepares the man, if he is sincerely following those values, for the spiritual life. But spiritual life founds itself on the truth that man is not a mental being or intellectual being or merely a vital being or an emotional being or a nervous being or a physical being, but man is essentially a spirit, is a divine essence or divine individuality, divine spark. And it is that which, when it becomes the point of seeking by an individual, well, then it becomes spiritual effort. Spiritual effort would be, therefore, the effort to awaken in oneself the essential divine center. That would amount to spirituality. That would begin a spirituality. And then spirituality also is conceived of as if it was otherworldly. Otherworldly in the sense that it would necessarily entail renunciation of life and nature, which also is not integral idea or integral conception of spirituality. The total conception of spirituality takes for granted the idea that spirituality is something that has to do very intimately with life. Spirituality is connected with life, and it is the feeling that there is a divine entity not only in the individual but in the cosmos, and the realization or effort to realize this inner spiritual entity, one, and secondly to manifest it in life, two, and to make the life here on earth some, you can say, expression of that truth would be spiritual effort. So spirituality bases itself on the fundamental idea that man is not merely a mental or intellectual being, not merely a vital being or emotional being, not a physical being, but essentially a spirit. And all the 3 or 4 things or 5 things which you recounted are his instruments through which the spirit is trying to express itself here. As the instruments are not conscious of the essential spirit or being that is at work, work goes on in ignorance or with an egoistic principle and with desire as his motive. That is the difficulty with man. If he becomes conscious of the inner self that is in him, then the instruments will have gradually to be trained or will be made to follow the lead of this inner spirit. Then these very instruments will become the instruments for expression of the divine entity that is in man. Instruments are not to be rejected. Their diversion, their at present their ignorant working, centering itself around ego and driven by desire, that is to be changed. Mind is not to be rejected. Mind is to be transformed in the sense that it must not receive initiation from the mental egoistic personality, but from the divine entity that is in him. Then this soul or spirit will use the mind for the expression of the truth or the reality which the divine will intend it to manifest in life. So that will be the place of the instruments, mind, intellect or emotional being or vital being or the physical being. All of them are at present egocentric, and that is the problem. Problem is how to remove the egocentricity of nature, which is working in man today, and how to take away the desire as the motive force and substitute something else, the divine will, in its place. That is a problem for man. And that can be solved by an inward look which first tries to awaken the inner spirit, awaken to the presence of the inner spirit, realize the inner spirit, and allow that inner spirit to govern mind, govern emotional being, govern life, and govern the dealings of life. Because it is life that is the field for expression of the spirit. Life is not a field only for the expression of ego, which at present it is. It is at present, therefore, a field of conflict, field of difficulties, field of disharmony. It is because of the egocentric outlook. As soon as the life moves around the inner divine center, there will be spontaneous expression of harmony. Because spirit being one in all, however varied or diverse be the expression, there will be no conflict. There will be no division, you see. It is a harmony that is expressing itself with one reality working in different variation of its own self. And as the variations depend upon one ultimate reality, there would not be disharmony. There would be only variation. There would be richness of expression rather than separation, division, and conflict. That is the idea of spirituality.
There aren't any pressing questions, Purani. I wondered if you would care to tell some of these people who weren't here when you were giving us the study course what is suggested as a good beginning in the practice.
Somebody wanted to ask something?
Has somebody got a question back there?
Well, I have a question.
Yeah.
I did.
Ask if a mediumship is it necessary to be a spiritual?
No. It's rather a risk, if I can give advice, but for oneself to take a step. Mediumship is a risk which one should not easily take. You see, it depends on what you become the medium. See, if there is a... See, the human being is here. And now if he opens, you see, to this level, then the being works from here. That is a level here. If it opens to this level, and the being from there works on him. If it opens to this level, then the being from that works on him, you see. So where does he open? Human being is very small, he is here, you see. Combined to his physical and vital and mental being, ego and desire. Now he opens out and breaks this shell, and he opens to this first universe, vital world. Well, he can get communication from there and he can become a medium. He can open to this world, which is a little further off, well, and open and then a communication and become medium of this one. He can open to this one, he can open to any number of things, and it is confusing unless one is guided by some great light to open only to the divine, because the aim of all the effort is to reach the spiritual, essential divine center and not to busy ourselves with spirits which are free from physical limitations and have got a range of consciousness and power which is certainly greater than human beings. But in potentiality, human being is far greater than these intermediate worlds. In the potentiality, the human being actually is weak. But in his potential capacity, he has the highest height which even the gods haven't got, as the Indian tradition would say. Because gods are typal. They represent a type. And as a type, they have very great power, very great, power of consciousness and knowledge and action and will and so on. And man has nothing compared to that. But man, if he can rise to what he is expected to, what is potential to him, well, he surpasses the gods, goes beyond the gods. Because gods cannot become different from what they are. They are not evolutionary. Whereas man is evolutionary with all his weaknesses, the possibility of evolution to him opens out the doors of the infinite and the eternal. Whereas for the intermediate beings, well, they have a limited range of power which is certainly greater than mere human being, but as potential, being, human being is far greater. He holds a great potentiality, and Indian tradition therefore has a very strong, many number of stories, a strong bias, saying that even the gods, when they want to become perfect in the sense of divine perfection, they have to take human birth. or Agni, the fire, god of fire, if he wants to reach perfection, he has to take human birth. Then only he can reach the divine, you see. This is a tradition. That is the meaning of it is symbolic. The meaning is not that actually they have to take birth, but the point is that this world is being evolutionary, it contains all the highest potentialities, whereas the other worlds being typal are fixed to the type.
Well, in going outward, you always go through these successive phases, don't you?
Yes, one in spirituality one crosses those fields. They are not unknown to a spiritual man.
Well, what's to prevent if you're doing this
Yes, see,
from getting stopped in the middle somewhere?
yes, you stop when you are full of either. You see, you don't stop there, or you don't. When you pass through it, it's not intentional. You automatically pass through. If from here you are going to some other country, you pass some country in between, isn't it? It's not that you wanted to pass through those countries.
You have the objective in front of you, you'll pass.
Yes, your objective is to reach the Supreme. Well, in between, of course, you pass through the vital belt, and if necessary, you get some experience of it. You know the beings, you have your own experience on that plane, and you know what they are and what they can do. But as you are not attracted or as you are not concerned with them, you simply pass on. A spiritual man evolved knows these planes, and he is not concerned, he doesn't want to bother about the details about it, but the main principle is always known. No spiritual man can attain his status without developing and passing through the conditions intermediate. Only some pass very fast and have cursory knowledge, some pass in detail and understand the thing and then go above. You see?
Shrimpong, would that explain Christ's temptation in the wilderness? You suppose that that he went through some of those phases.
Perhaps. I'm not so keen a student as to say that I know it correctly, because I'm not a very close student of it. And as I don't know very well, probably it means that perhaps. It is intermediate levels of consciousness where the beings tempt you with certain powers, occult powers, or powers of, doing what people call miracles. They are not miracles, but people will call them miracles. So with the powers, they are tempting the people, the soul. And if the man is not tempted, then he goes beyond. That's the idea.
Well, you remember at the culmination of this long struggle and this realization in the wilderness, when he went without food for 40 days and nights, the devil took him to the high mountain and showed him all the kingdoms of the earth. He said, if you will become subject to me, these are yours. He said, thou shalt not tempt the Lord thy God.
Yes. That is what happened also to Gautam Buddha, if you remember. The fight with the Mara when he got the illumination. The picture is there, Gautam Buddha sitting in meditation and forces are attacking him. Have you not seen that painting?
No.
Yes, that was also a fight with the forces of ignorance trying to tempt Gautam Buddha when he was on the threshold of his illumination, you see?
Yes.
Yes, so, and there is a story in Kathopanishad which I recounted, if you remember. Nachiketas, the young boy of 12 years, was witness to his father's sacrifice of the cows, in which cows were given in charity. And as the old father was a practical man, he did not want to give milking milked cows, but he gave cows that were not, that had finished milking, you see. Old cows, as you would call them, you see. Cows without teeth, as you would say. And so this boy was a little, upset in his mind that why does father give such things in charity? If charity is to be done, we must give best things. So he didn't want to tell his father. The ceremony was going on, people were performing sacrifice and the priest was there and the fire was lighted and so on. He couldn't tell his father all these things. So he interceded and went often to his father and said, Father, whom will you give me? Because he was the only son of his father, and that way being his best offering, he thought of asking his father, whom would you give me? So the father brushed him aside as a young kid who was simply interfering in the ceremony and pushed him aside. Twice or thrice he asked him. When he asked the third time, then the father said, I gave him to the god of death. Yama, as you call it in India, you see. Well, then he said, I must go to Yama. So this young boy, 12, went to the house of god of death. And God of Death had gone on its business. He has hard work to do. You see, a lot of people to carry and to put them in the proper place. So every day, the population on that side is greater than on this side. You see, so he has a hard work to do. So he came after 3 days. And this boy was sitting there. Because he was not one of his, subjects. It was not his time to die. You see, he came as a guest because his father asked him to go to the house of God of Death. He was there. Well, God of Death came and said, what is the matter with you, young boy? He said, I am here 3 days sitting here for you. So he said, then you are my guest because I had no right to take you now, you see. So 3 days you remained, and it's not good for an Indian not to serve his guests. Now 3 days you remain without being served. You must ask 3 boons. For compensation, I must recompense it, you see. So you please ask 3 boons for having remained here 3 days without attention. So he asked that I will go back to life now after meeting you. My father shouldn't be angry. He was angry, and in anger he told me, you go to the God of Death. Well, when I go back, he should be pleased and happy. He said, all right. Secondly, he asked that people say that if you light a certain kind of fire, you attain the divine. Is it possible? So God of Death said, yes, it is possible. This fire is symbolic. Fire is the fire of aspiration in your heart. And if you arrange properly the bricks and prepare the altar and give your offering, well, this very offering of material objects, of things that are evanescent, temporary and passing, can lead you to the immortal, eternal and the infinite. You understand? The God of Death gave him the knowledge of the fire of sacrifice, and he said, if you know how to arrange the bricks and prepare the altar and make the offering in the right way, then your offering will be consisting of material objects. What you will offer is something physical, visible, real. Real in the sense of materially real. And the object which you attain will be immaterial, spiritual, divine. It can lead you. With this impermanent things, you can attain the permanent. Second. Then he asks, well, third question is, my boon is, what happens to a man after death? After they come to you, what happens to the soul? He said, this is a question which I won't like to answer. So you put some other question. He said, no, I don't want to put anything. If you don't want to grant the boon, all right, don't grant. But there is nothing else that I would ask. Then God of Death told him, look, you want money, I can give you money. If you want land, I can give you land. If you want power, I can give you power. If you want enjoyment, I can give enjoyment. And so on. One by one he counts in 10 or 12 long verses, everything that he can have. Jewels and silver and gold and anything. He said, look here. Na vitte natarpaniyo manusyo. This is the word from the Upanishad. More than 2,000 years old business, you see. And he says, man is not to be happy and satisfied by money or gold. Who will like to live a long life knowing that he has ultimately to come but at your regime? Ati dirghena jivitena ko rameta. Who would enjoy a long life knowing that he has ultimately come under your domination, domination of death? Therefore, it is only temporary things. What is man, he says. Then he says, man is, the boy says to the God of Death, you see, man is like the grass in the prairie. He dries up and he is again born again and again, you see. Sasyamiv pachyate martya sasyamiv jayate punaha. Like grass he dies and dries away, like grass he grows again. In that process, I want to understand what happens to him after he dies. If you don't explain, all right. So temptation was there. I am only pointing out that overcoming temptation is a condition of spiritual attainment. Voila, that's it. Then the God of Death explains to him and explains how immortality is attained and that death is only a passage for expression of an ultimate reality here. And when the will is over, well, what people call death takes place. Death is only of the body and not of the spirit.
Are there any stages for illumination?
Yes. It depends on the...
Or are there any stages for illumination? And what are they?
Yes, eliminate. We today morning had the talk about it slightly. Ashwapati developing his own inner consciousness. There are 2 ways, or 3 ways, or 4 ways. There are many ways. You see, illumination doesn't come in one way. If the goal of the aspirant is fixed, his illumination will be along that line. Supposing you have an aspirant who says that nature is unreal to him, or nature is illusory, or nature is not capable of perfection, he starts with that axiom, then all his illumination will be along the line of the spirit. He will not try to bother himself about nature, except to the extent that he has to reject. That's all. His process in dealing with nature will be confined or restricted to rejection of nature. If he takes up, say, for instance, man with a dominantly intellectual turn of consciousness or nature, well, if he takes to this path, then his line of illumination will be along mental illumination. You see, mind dominating as an instrument for the experience. If he is an emotional being, a man centered on his emotional being, and proceeds and starts with his emotion, well, his line of illumination will be different. You see, it depends on constitution. But generally, if you take a total view and an integral aspect of Sri Aurobindo's point of view, then he would say that there are 2 major ways. One is when you start with your psychic being and when you start with your intellectual being, the 2 beings. You start with your mind or you start with your emotional being behind your surface feeling nature. It is not feeling nature which one experiences, but the being that is behind the emotional nature. Then you follow 2 lines. One line is, well, breaking the limit of the mind and going above. Then you come to the, we have done it in Life Divine. I am only repeating what you have done. You take mind here. For the sake of convenience, you take the human skull so as to represent the mind. You see, now when he opens here and breaks through, the first level he might come to higher mind. The level here, you see. If he goes further up, he comes to illumined mind. Illumined mental being or illumined mind. If he goes further, he comes to intuitive mind. Or intuitive consciousness, rather, more correct. Intuitive consciousness. And if he goes above, he comes to the overmind consciousness. Now, the character of each one is slightly different. You have got to go through experience in order to know what it means. For instance, in the higher mind, the ideation or will that comes does not come as it comes in intellectual mind. Intellectual mind is here. In the intellectual mind, you work upon the evidence of the senses, on sensation. And on the evidence of the sensation, you work out a conclusion. And then you can be an abstract, you can arrive at an abstract, abstraction, so to say here, on the basis of sensation. And that abstraction is your principle, or you can say your theory, your hypothesis, and so on. In intellect, you have only an abstraction based upon sense evidence. Whereas here in the higher mind, you are looking from the top of a hill, you don't require the evidence of the senses that you require here. The very same evidence of the senses will lead to quite different conclusion and different view, different vision. You don't see one by one, you see a patch. In knowledge, I'm only trying to illustrate by words what is beyond words. You see, you must understand that when you are in the intellectual being, you are seeing like that. One by one, see one thing like that. When you are in the heart, you see like that. You see? When you are in intuitive consciousness, you see still further, like that, thousands of miles, so to say, as if supposing you are in darkness, and suddenly a flash of lightning takes place. You see 10 miles. Clearly there is mountain, there is water, there is everything. Again it closes. Well, you have seen what it is, well, it is gone. When you become permanently stationed there in the intuitive consciousness, then you can permanently see from there. There is no intervention afterwards. If you can put yourself, it is question of raising yourself, ascent, and stationing yourself there. Just like an aeroplane, when it goes up, it must maintain its height. You see, the same way the mental being, or the consciousness from the mind, really speaking, must maintain its height. Then it will have sweep. And when it is in the overmind consciousness here, then the sweep is cosmic. It doesn't see only little things, it sees the whole world, whole mental world, whole vital world, the whole material world. Everything is seen like sunlight all the time shining. Imagine no night intervening. Well, that is some aspect of the overmental consciousness. It covers the whole universe and opens again that universe to something above the universe at the same time. Simultaneously, it is dividing and joining. This overmental consciousness, if you take separately, it is like a wing of a, you see, powerful bird. I therefore roughly put like a bird, you see, this wing. Now this wing has an opening to the sun above, you see. This wing covers this world that is below. Universe that is below is covered by this wing. But it also makes possible, if you open the connection here, a possible connection with the sunlight which is above. These wings cover here and over and above there is a sun here, you see. The light of the truth, the supreme consciousness of the divine. So the overmental consciousness makes it possible for the mental being first to get into this vastness and open to this divine consciousness or truth consciousness above. That is the rung of the ladder. Well, that one idea of how the rung is arranged.
Center of consciousness, when you're in the higher mind, is that above the head?
Yes, above the general.
Oh.
Or you can remain in the mind and shoot up when necessary. One of the two, it depends on the process. I have defined in my study and approach to Savitri. I give you further guidance if you want. My book, Study and Approach to Savitri, contains the details about each one, the nature of the experience in Sri Aurobindo's own words. Yes, it is Study and Approach to Savitri.
Yes. Purani, if someone asked you, what is Savitri, how would you, I mean, in just a few words, Savitri.
Savitri.
If
Savitri is a sea of universes.
The sea of universes.
Yes. So many universes are floating in it. Therefore, I call it ocean or sea of universes. There are many. There is a physical world and physical universe in it. There is a vital universe and it is in it. There is a subtle material universe and there is in it. You see, in the vital there are a number of universes. Higher vital, middle vital, lower vital, and the opposite of the divine, the anti-divine vital, you see. So, and then mind, the lower mind, the middle mind, and the highest mind, then ideal mind. Then there is cosmic consciousness, the world soul. Then there is beyond the unknowable. Then there is the house of the spirit. Well, it is a number, therefore an ocean of worlds, ocean of universes. In any one of them you can be lost.
Could you say also that's an epic poem by Sri Aurobindo?
Well, it's really speaking in a poetic representation of the journey of consciousness from the inconscient to the possible fulfillment in the superconscient. You see? The poetic representation of the process of growth, the growth of consciousness beginning with the inconscience, rising to, well, planes of consciousness, one by one, several planes of consciousness, and pointing to the fulfillment in the superconscient or in the divine. Then it gives you the processes also of how to do it, by what method it is done. It is not merely a statement, it affirms, but at the same time it indirectly suggests how it can be done. How one can break open the lid of ignorance and open oneself to the sun of truth. You see, the light of the truth. Explain the cosmos. You see, in one of the old critics said that the function of the great epic would be to justify the ways of God to man. To justify the ways of God to man. Well, Savitri, more than any other epic, justifies the ways of God to man. It shows that the world as we know it is a divine working, and whatever shortcomings, mistakes, ignorant movement, conflict with you has some purpose. And they can be eliminated if a certain process is followed. So he justifies the ways of God to man.
Don't you think, Purani, that most people, though, need some guidance and some help with Savitri? It would be difficult to read alone.
Perhaps, yes. As I told you, it requires readjustment of the screws of mind. And some screws of the mind must be loose. Otherwise, Savitri can't enter. Some screws of the mind must be a little relaxed, you see, then it can get in. Otherwise, it's too tight. Well, it will break the machine or not enter. You get headache.
A little while ago, when you were starting out about discussing Sri Aurobindo's integral approach, you said there were two methods. One was mental, the other was psychic.
Yeah.
You went through this rather detailed explanation, most of which appeared to be mental.
Yes, which is intellectual, from the intellect point of view.
Now,
If you went to the psychic, then the process could be simpler. Simpler in the sense that you need not go through the illumined mind or through the... you can directly go to the intuition. That's how the psychic does. I'll show you how it happens in the case of the psychic, you see. Now we again get to the human being, isn't it? Now the psychic is here behind the heart, you see. The psychic entity will be here. It has a direct approach to the higher consciousness. It does not to go through mind or anything. You see, mind and these are in nature part. This is independent of nature because it is behind nature. Psychic being is not involved in nature. It remains outside and wants to guide nature. It is, as I told in my talk, like an angler or like a fisherman who puts the line and to catch the fish. So it puts the line in mind, he puts the line in the emotional being, puts the line in the vital being, and sees if the outer being can be pulled to admit its guidance, its suggestion, or its leadership. The psychic is there to guide the nature to truth, to the divine, to the supreme. It does it through nature. It can't compel. It can speak from inside, as people say, voice of the conscience. Yes, it can say, but if you don't listen to the voice, well, it can stop. Because it doesn't compel. It compels by its presence and by making itself felt as if it is a monitor. It is a guide. Well, it is there to take care of you. But if one doesn't listen to it, it doesn't force. It again tries, second time, third time, fourth time, through different methods. In the mind it may try, in the emotional being it may try, in life it may try, in actual vital being it may try, in the willpower it may try. It tries to all methods in order to pull the attention of the nature part to its presence and to the necessity of depending upon it. That is what the psychic being does. Now, if you take the psychic being pure and simple here, then the psychic has a direct approach to the supreme consciousness. You see, if you take it as the sun, the psychic being, I forgot to put it on. Yeah. You see, the psychic being has a direct approach to the sun. The mind is here. You see, the mind is left aside. The psychic goes direct to the sun and brings down the light here in the psychic being. It direct gets the light, and it can give this light to the mind. If the mind is here, it can give guidance to the mind. It can give the guidance to the heart. It can give the guidance to the vital thing, to the willpower. And the stages through which the psychic passes is, well, first, stabilizing its control over nature here, then widening these instruments into universality. If it's a divine will, you see, then this mental, first mind is personal or egoistic. That is widened into universal mind. The vital being is individual and egoistic. The vital being becomes universalized and fulfills the universal will in the vital being. Well, the same happens when it contacts the sun, with the truth, and converts by the three stages of, governing by the three stages which I recounted in the morning: psychicization, universalization, and supramentalization. The transformation of nature is effected more easily by the psychic being if one allows the psychic being to lead. There are people who can't read books on philosophy but are very good sadhaks because they are open in their psychic being. Their inner soul directly approaches the truth, receives the truth, is satisfied, not bothered about questions. Well, he can convert or transform his nature without any much difficulty. You can find such natures, of course, 1 in 10,000, but
That accounts for
Yeah.
Ramkrishna, doesn't it?
many people, even in ordinary life, there are people who are very simple, very straight, have no difficulty with the mind because mind, when it's only centered around the physical mind, only is creating trouble. Otherwise, pure mind would be very easy to convince when the divine presence is there, the psychic being is there. It is only the mind that is, learned to depend on sense and physical things. That always creates doubt and questioning and so on. But if the psychic can be allowed to come in front by a simple process of devotion and surrender to the divine, well, the path would be very much simpler. But modern world is such that such people are more and more rare now. More and more rare because the atmosphere is such that that simple childlike faith in one's own spiritual entity and a faith in the divine to maintain for long really is difficult. It's difficult because if the heart is all right, perhaps his vital being may not be quite straight. And then if he can allow the vital to listen to the psychic, it is all right. But if the vital is turned downwards or turned horizontally straight like that, well, the psychic would not be able to pull it back. Such simple constitution like Ramakrishna is rare. You see, is the one in a century. You see.
Would better, in the simplest acceptance better than.
Yes, if it can be simple and acceptance. People may say, yes, what is it?
Oh, I was trying to say, how do you develop the psychic?
Well, psychic if you develop by 3 ways from ordinary life.
Purani, could I just say, while you're doing that the psychic in Aurobindo's teaching means the same as the divine spark,
Yes.
the same as the spark.
Psychic is the true individual in man.
True individual.
There are, you can say, personality. Now, personality is not individuality. Personality is nature self. Nature self. It can be mental, it can be vital, it can be emotional, it can be physical. This is nature personality, generally ignorant, egocentric. This is egocentric. That is not the true being. True being is the psychic being, the soul. This is the psychic being, and psychic being is the soul. Soul is the true entity. True individuality in man is the psychic being. There are several ways in which the psychic being is used in English language, the word psychic. You see, the Greek used it in the sense of the vital being. That is why I want to be particular. The psyche generally in the Greek is the vital self and not the true spiritual being entity, you see. The psyche, when they speak of the vital being, you see. Now, this, in Sri Aurobindo outlook, we have to be particular. That would be near the soul. What in the religious scripture is called the soul is the psychic being. Soul is the true individual spark of the divine in man. The divine essential spark representing the divinity in the individual. That is the psychic being. Now, that psychic being, our friend is asking how to develop, isn't it? That was the point, yes. That was the point, isn't it?
Yeah.
Right. Now, in nature, you are in nature, you are not in the psychic being ordinarily. Man is in nature. Nature has 3 instruments: mind, emotional being, psychological I am taking only, and his vital being or willpower. You see, the vital being. So, the psychic has to work only in these 3. If psychic is to awaken, It is to be done by the agency or instrumentality of mind or emotional being or vital being. How do you do that? What do you do to awaken? In this nature, there is attraction of the desire. There is greed. There is attraction. There is ego. Selfishness. Greed. And you see, ambition. And 1,000 other things. I don't recount because that means whole human psychology. You see, in the emotion there is hope and despair and like and dislike and enthusiasm and depression, and in the vital being there is again many elements like that, conflicting movements, duality. But in this very nature also there is an attraction for truth. In this very nature, mind can seek the truth. The vital can seek the truth. Yes. So there is a seeking for truth, there is seeking for the right, seeking for, well, you can say beauty, or effort at nobility, desire or impulse to be unselfish. There is love. Now these are the elements that can, if constantly followed, awaken the psychic being.
Constantly followed.
Huh?
Constantly followed.
Constantly followed. Because nature has these attractions. As against desire, ambition, greed, lust, selfishness and ambition and domination and pride and so on, vanity. Against that, there are also these positive tendencies present in man. Love for truth or seeking for the truth, seeking for the right, whether what I am doing is right or not. He must seek in nature part. Well, that will allow the psychic being to intervene. Do you understand? The point is psychic. The only avenue open to the psychic being is through these activities of nature. And if one allows nature, these activities of nature, positive activities, then psychic being gets a chance of intervening and coming to the surface. When it completely takes hold of the nature, then question doesn't arise afterwards. He knows the truth without any idea of seeking for it. Psychic immediately gives the truth without any argumentation or logic. It's an intuitive working afterwards when the psychic is completely in control. But to awaken it, the best is that a man must learn to follow the line of positive, attraction for the truth or the right or beauty or nobility or unselfishness or love or something in which his ego is lessened somehow or other. And all the time something more than his personality is brought forward. The ego is always pushed back. Desires are always pushed back. When one follows this, he will always find that he will have to control the lower tendencies. What are called the infra-rational movements of man will have to be rejected and completely controlled. Then the psychic being gets a chance of action. And when it can act, well, there is a chance of awakening.
Well, as a practical methodology, isn't that when you're open to the divine and you offer up these undesirable traits?
Yes, that is simple. I am talking of somebody who is not open to the divine.
No, but I mean, if you are, this is the divine can do it far better than you can do it yourself.
Yes, because divine is a psychic being in you. And if any part of your being opens directly to the divine, it means the psychic in you will immediately act in the guidance of the divine. Yes.
You say that in most cases, this is an organic growth. I mean, this is not just a sudden. In some cases, there is great illumination and marvelous influx of power and insight and control over nature. But in most cases, I think these organs develop slowly in their consciousness towards the divine and the divine's hold on them. They become organs of consciousness and they develop organically. They go through a gradual process of strengthening and development, do you not?
Yes. You don't remain confined to a present formula. You awaken new powers and you get gradually fixed in the new powers. New powers gradually tend to become permanent.
but you're not aware of this process. It's so gradual in most cases that you don't.
Generally, if you are in the inner life, inward turn, you become conscious. You become conscious.
You become conscious, but
Yes.
it's a slow process.
Yes, yes, it will not happen in a day, of course, no. I don't say that even when you go into the higher consciousness, the result may not be immediately felt on nature, but then a faith is given because you know, by experience, you know that the truth is there. The illumination, when it comes, it may close again, but then having once the illumination, you have the assurance and faith that it is there, you see. Even though not seen immediately, it is there. And it is that faith which keeps you up in your trial to make it permanent.
Purani, the day we went to Grand Canyon, you gave a very beautiful definition of aspiration and inspiration. Would you repeat that so I can have it in your words?
Aspiration.
Oh, I have it in here.
Aspiration.
You said that aspiration was like the seed, Purani.
Yes, it's like a.
You said aspire is not good or a bad desire, but the urge or yearning of the seed lightward to find itself. That's
Yes.
what you mean? Yeah.
Really speaking, aspiration is like a flame of fire, you see. A flame of fire from the soul or from the mind, from the heart or from the vital being. It is like it's not exactly will, but it's not wish either, you see. It's an impulse. It's an impulse to grow into something which one feels is his own self, so to say. Grow into, to become something. It is not to have something. In aspiration, you don't want to possess something or to have something for yourself, but you want to become. Say, when you want to become, say, you want to say, I want to have peace. Now, this impulse to have peace is an aspiration. But when you say, I want to have a house, well, it is different. You say, I want to.
This is a yearning of the soul.
Yes, it is a yearning for the inner being to realize itself in life. You see, the realization is gradual. The full vision is not seen. It is seen part by part. That is to say, the nature urges that aspiration which it needs most. If one is, for instance, lack of control is there, then generally the soul is capable of aspiring, it will say, well, I want to control myself. You see, let me control myself. I want to control myself. Or if he is not in peace, he will say, I want to attain peace. Or if he is ignorant, he will say, I want to know. I want to know. You see, I want to understand. And then he say, I want to become pure. I want to become pure. The forms of aspiration are forms which indicate the line of growth toward the ultimate truth which one is. But it is step by step, according to the need of each individual, according to the condition of the psychological being, well, the aspiration will come. Aspiration is not a fixed form. You can say general form will be that it will not turn towards ego satisfaction or towards desire or towards, towards maintaining the present limitation of mind and life and body and, the circle of ignorance. It will be always something which tends to enlarge the being, expand the being, realize states which are, not ordinarily experienced in ordinary movements of life. I mean, peace, purity, control, equanimity, or desire to know who am I, what am I, or what am I doing, why am I doing what am I doing, and so on. These questions are looking at one's own self and seeing what am I doing all the time. Who is guiding me? Who is goading my movements of thought or impulse or movement of action? From where did I act? Well, all these amount to an aspiration ultimately. All these are actions of aspiration. It can be, it can take million forms. But in a nutshell, if you want to know, it is like a seed. When the seed is asked a question, what do you want? It says, I want to become a tree. Well, this is aspiration.
It always starts from the inner being and goes out.
But the whole potentiality is there. It isn't asking anything from outside. A seed has all the equipment of becoming a tree within itself. Man has all the equipment of becoming divine within his own self. He He may start by saying, I want to control myself, I want to be pure, I want to be peaceful, but ultimately he will end by trying to know himself because he is the divine. He will end in identity with the Supreme. One may start with that idea that I want to realize my true self. That is like the seed asking to become a tree, that's all. And aspiration is the expression of the potentiality of the divine in man. Faith in that potentiality expresses itself in aspiration. The divine potentiality in man is felt as an aspiration, you see.
The same thing then, inspiration is different.
No, inspiration is the working of the higher consciousness in the human being, beyond mind. Inspiration works from above, aspiration works from below. Where is that gone? If the psychic being is here, the aspiration rises from the psychic being, but it may go into the mind. It may go into the emotional being. It may go into the vital being and work here, work here, work here. You see, it is a real psychic being, and if it can directly aspire, well, it is most effective. But it can aspire through mind, intellectual being. It can aspire through emotional being. It aspires through here. Now, what you call inspiration is here. This is aspiration, seat of aspiration. Inspiration is here. And that can intervene directly from there to here. Or it can come from here to here. It can come from there to here. It can come from there to here. Inspiration is above the mind. You see, this is region of the intellect. This is intellect. Inspiration is above the intellect, and it can penetrate from there to the psychic being straight. And psychic being can give its guidance to any part of nature. That is one way of receiving inspiration. Inspiration can be with regard to an action, whether one should do this thing or not. Well, you can get the guidance from inspiration or from the psychic being, because psychic can receive the inspiration direct. Or he can receive in the mind, he can receive in the emotional being, or receive in the vital being. Inspiration is a faculty beyond rational consciousness of man, beyond the intelligence or intellect of man. But it is active, and it can be made active by opening to the higher consciousness, by making reason or intellect silent, and opening to the above and making oneself open to higher guidance. Then inspiration can come down. Inspiration is really operation of self-existent knowledge. Their knowledge is already present. It's from the sun, so to say. The rays are coming down from the sun. Sun is the truth, you see. And mind is between light and darkness, so mind is unable to decide. Generally, when mind is fronted with a question, mind is being living in light and darkness, it says this may be or this may be. Well, then it opens to the inspiration. There it's only the rays of the sun. Inspiration has no thinking. It is only rays of the sun come down in the mind and confirm the light here, that's all. It says this is true, that's all, and it gives you the guidance. Very often, in most practical difficulties, people, when they are in a fix, so to say, unable to decide, they refer to this faculty, either intuition or inspiration. Even some generals were guided like that in their battles. They didn't know what to do because 50-50 chance is which one to decide. Then suddenly a guidance from there comes and says, do that. And then he obeys and carries out the thing. That's how inspiration comes from above, because inspiration is the working of knowledge. Self-existent knowledge and the ray of self-existent knowledge penetrating into the human consciousness, human reason or human intellect, well, is inspiration. He feels a great exaltation at that time. When inspiration comes, the individual being is exalted sometimes. He is in a mood to receive because it is a flatus of something high, you see. The Greeks used to call it enthusiasmos. A poet, when he received the higher afflatus, as they call it, well, he was in that mood to receive the inspiration. He had to prepare himself. He couldn't always write poetry. That was at that time a convention, that you must write from inspiration, and so you must get, whenever it comes, otherwise it doesn't come. So they used to wait and try to prepare themselves, sometimes by taking, exciting drugs or something which will make your nervous system vibrate to a vibration which might immediately put it in contact with the higher consciousness. Exaltation, condition of exaltation in which one receives. A voice comes down, or a guidance comes down, or a ray comes down, or a suggestion comes down, and it guides the man. Well, 8 out of 10 times it may be right, or 9 times out of 10 it may be right. Sometimes it may not be, because there are intermediate forces which can intervene, and one is not pure in his asking for the guidance, so his own desire and his own expectations also can mingle with it and get a mixture out of it, you see. Exaltation, condition of exaltation in which one receives. A voice comes down, or a guidance comes down, or a ray comes down, or a suggestion comes down, and it guides the man. Well, 8 out of 10 times it may be right, or 9 times out of 10 it may be right. Sometimes it may not be, because there are intermediate forces which can intervene, and one is not pure in his asking for the guidance, so his own desire and his own expectations also can mingle with it and get a mixture out of it, you see. But that's a detail.
John, you were talking one time about the bad side effects of non-resistance, of non-violence. You told a story about a man who had a cow, and the people took the cow away from him.
Yes.
Yes. And then later someone attacked the man who had taken away the cow.
Yes.
Oh, now, did this bad side effect come because the man who was practicing the non-resistance had a resentment, or would it?
No, you see,
anyway?
his resentment would not count. There is a balance of forces working in the cosmos, cosmic forces. And his non-resistance, even though very sincere, evokes universal forces into movement. He doesn't want any violence. He is wedded to non-violence. But his very remaining non-violence under irritation, under injustice, isn't it? That's what it comes to. Yes. Well, gathers, it's like an electric current. You see, if you have a positive current here, all that is negative will gather round, is it not? So he, by his non-resistance, creates a negation or rejection of the action. Well, the universal forces that are around are evoked into movement by his very passivity, by his very non-violence and non-resistance. And they are not wedded to non-violence. As he is wedded to non-violence, they are having their play. And their play is to set right the balance by doing something by which great injustice will be set right. And injustice every time is not set right by non-violence, nor is it set by violence. But both our ways are tried, and when a man does not resist, he may be responsible for a great destruction. That is what Sri Aurobindo pointed out, that he may not be directly taking part in it, but his very non-violent resistance might be responsible for creating a response to the universal forces which might bring tremendous violence. Well, Gandhi realized it more than once in his lifetime. I am witness to it. Gandhi realized it more than once. You see, he would insist on non-violence, and people would say, yes, we will do non-violence. But they can't keep to it. They can't keep to it. So it begins 1 day, 2 days. On the 3rd day, there is burning and killing and all sorts of things, and military has to be called in and so on. Nothing, it doesn't. See, you are dealing with large number of persons who are not as evolved as you are, or not wedded to this theory or the principle of non-violence sincerely or from conviction. They do it because it's a policy and it might bring the result. They are doing it for result. Well, if they see that it is ineffective, they immediately step back and just revert to their original position, and that creates just the opposite effect.
Well, suppose the man with the cow had been a man with very great spiritual force or some kind of force, and we had been able to project a strong enough vibration that somehow he would prevent the man from taking the cow, convince him it wasn't so good or something by the very force of his vibration.
Yes, that would be
that. Have a bad reaction?
No, but that is itself one debatable point. Debatable in the sense that there are beings in the human life who are wedded to anti-divinity. They are the result of anti-divine movement in nature, and they open themselves to these movements. And if a being is, under the domination of this anti-divine force, well, no amount of conviction will, no amount of persuasion will work. No amount works. This is a fact of life. You can't say that why is it so? It is so. What was the reason for Christ being crucified? Let us see. What was the reason? Tell me. Did he do any wrong to any person? Any injustice to any person? Did he injure anybody's feelings? Nothing of the kind. And still, he had to pay with his life. And now, if this is not anti-divinity, I don't know what it is. That the world does not want to tolerate anything truth, anything great, anything divine, you see.
Well, Christ was crucified for a reason. Actually, to show the symbol of love.
No, that is another, no, but...
Is that what you...
No, I am pointing out that there is anti-divinity in human nature.
Incorrigible, I thought it was.
When it is goaded by the anti-divine forces, naturally it is incorrigible. You cannot correct. You cannot correct a man. Cannot. I mean, you can't convince a man like Hitler. Another instance which is recently known. By no amount of logic you can make him understand that this is not right.
But some people you can, though.
It depends on who he is, you see. The human being has the difficulty that, you see, he is an intermediate term. Human being difficulty is very great in one sense, and opportunity also is great. See, there is something which is, super, and there is something which is infra. And man is in any of things. Now, believing himself to be the master of the situation, which is not true. He is the result of these infra-rational forces, and also is subject to the attraction of the supra-rational, or that which is above the human range, say superhuman range, put it properly. Superhuman range, it's superhumanity or super, whatever you like to call it, you see. He is attracted by this, he is attracted by that. There is a gravitational pull and there is an upward pull. And between the two, man is here, intermediate. He must either go this way or that way. So if the being is wedded to this, because from this world beings intervene here, and then if somebody has given himself entirely to this, it will be only gravitational pull and nothing else. And in order to prevent him from intervening in life, you have to destroy him. Otherwise he will be like a pest and going on increasing with us.
Thinking non-violence more than just not being violent. That is,
Yes.
doesn't it mean the person has to be purified, he has to be in a spiritual state where he can be completely true? And I mean, there are many things involved. It isn't just that you don't act violently, isn't that true?
Yes, non-violence, sincere non-violence is something very difficult.
Very spiritual thing, yeah.
Very difficult, first of all.
And Gandhi's case wasn't a very effective political instrument against the British in their frame of mind.
Well,
Much more than ours. If the Russians had been controlling it, non-violence wouldn't have worked the same way.
well, that's what Sri Aurobindo told that man. The son of Gandhi came to see Sri Aurobindo, and he said, that, don't you believe in non-violence? He said, yes, I like to believe in it because it is better than the resort to force and violence. But the world is so constituted that you can't act up it in all cases. There are cases in which you can carry it through and take your chance. There are cases in which you cannot. And he gave the instance, supposing the Afghans attack India, what would you do, he said. He told his son, Devidas Gandhi had come in 1919, and he put him this question, supposing the Afghans attacked India, what would you do? British are all right because they want to have a good name. And they will say we will go by some rule and law, and even if they put you in prison, they will first pass a law in the legislative that anybody who is writing this will be put in prison. They want to appear, respectable. So that we act according, this is the law. Law may be stupid or unjust, but they pass a law before they do anything. But there are nations like the Japanese or like the Germans or like, or the Afghans. If they had a chance, they wouldn't allow you to have any chance at all. I mean, they would simply
Well, actually, it was a political as well as spiritual movement.
Yes, in his own case, it was a very spiritual attitude and a true attitude because he believed that throughout life one must take all the risk to carry out non-violence as the highest truth in life for behavior and for inner realization. Because for him, that was the truth. His conception of truth is non-violence. Whether it is a limited aspect is another matter. But as far as it went, he was very sincere and he carried it out as any human being could carry out, I mean, to the limit. So that way he's entitled to the great respect.
And another question, how is it that something could be incorrigible? Isn't there some kind of, if even matter is living and plants and animals and
Yes,
even the stones have potential in them, how is it incorrigible?
Because it puts an artificial barrier. I'll show you how it happens. You see, it's quite interesting in one sense. Now, here's the human being and the psychic being is here. From the lower vital world here, this is the lower vital world, you see like that. This is the normal vital world. Now, in the lower vital world, the being projects itself here and take possession of the vital being here. So what happens is, a seven-wall, fortification is around the psychic being, it is cut off. Psychic being is there, present, cut off. And it's only this world from here, some negative being has come and taken possession, is enjoying life here all around and governing this human being as if this house now belongs to this being and not to this being. The original, the Savitri has written very fine poetry about it. The proprietor of the house is dispossessed. And somebody outside simply takes hold of the house and runs the whole household. It can happen in life. One's house, if somebody comes and dispossesses him, throws him out, well, he takes hold of the house and uses it as his own house. Till the man who is himself responsible here this being arises and he opens out this being, which means real difficulty because it has been in possession of some foreign fellow. His own being is crushed out. You see, it is walled off. Psychic being is walled off and it is there inside. Now, maybe 7 lives, 10 lives, 20 lives, after that, it may have a chance of breaking through the wall and coming out. Well, it's the choice of the soul. What can you do?
But possessing beings aren't always bad. Possessing beings, I mean, it's bad for the individual, but they aren't always pure evil.
Yes, well, when possession is allowed, well, it is the full consent of the individual that they come in first. Afterwards, when the individual wants to drive, they will not go. They won't go. First coming is willing, because it gives great power. So one wants to wield great power, says yes. Well, then when he is held, well, then afterwards there is no chance. I mean, the psychic is pushed back with a curtain which is solid, and not one but several, one by one. It is very difficult to break through. The psychic being might be weeping inside, you see. Might be weeping inside, which does happen. These people might get a moment in 20 years, 15 years when they feel sad, you see. With all the power, they might feel very sad. That is the psychic being trying to see if it can make its voice heard, you see, through the great thick wall. It's very difficult. Once it is there, it's very difficult. That's why one should beware of abnormal power, which works under egoism and fulfills ambition of the vital ego. It is that which brings these beings into. Normally man is ignorant. Ignorance is not a vice or difficulty. Ignorance is not abnormal. Normal condition of man is ignorance. But this allowing a abnormal being to come and promise a great power and expansion of one's force and power over others and so on, that is something abnormal. That is not normal ignorance. It is not normal ignorance. It is something that is trying to usurp the throne of the divine. It is trying to push back the divine and say, worship me. That is what this ego does generally. If it is a big ego that comes in and possesses the man, he says, I am God.
Well, the only thing that can be done with possession then, and the evil type is to.
Yes, for the time being, to save the world, I mean. To save the world, what you have to do is to get rid of him for the time being, and next time give him a better chance of the psychic being to see if he can come forward. There is no other goal. I think the question is, when two people are finally decided that either you are there or I am there, then the only question is one of them is not there. That's all. If the situation works up to this, either you or I, then of course there is one only afterwards. One of them must remain, the other must go.
You spoke of pure evil. There is no such thing as pure evil, is it?
There is an anti-divinity, and you can call it pure evil in the sense that it is a perversion of a truth, perversion of an original power. You see, you see, it's a real necessity. If you want to understand, you have to then go to a higher level, then you understand its utility in the universe. Ordinary man finds it very difficult to conceive the divine. It is so far from his nature, ordinary human nature, that he finds it very difficult to conceive of the divine. And even when he becomes pure, sattvic, devoted, unselfish, and so on, the power or the capacity he evokes is very small. He may think much of it himself. You see that, oh, I'm very pure and so on, but you see, for that purpose of reaching the divine, it is very inadequate, really inadequate. All sattvic nature or virtue is very often addition to pride and egoism, to man. He always, as I told in one of our talks, that man always is very conscious of his virtue and thinks that he is very pious and good and devoted and so on. And that goes on inflating his ego more and more, very often. So even with the best of effort, the human nature is not capable of rising to the divine in order to fully identify and know and understand it. What happens is that at times this negative aspect, which is anti-divine, comes into life. It generally keeps below. It doesn't come into life very often. But when it bursts out into life, well, it has a very limited scope for action. But there are periods in human history when it actually bursts on the surface of man's conscious life and then catches hold of all the seats of, government and power and so to say, turning man's course of life. Now, this anti-divinity coming is a good occasion in one sense, because man then is obliged to go within himself and seek something much greater than the anti-divine force that is against him, isn't it? If it was not there, probably he would be, mild and quite weak and virtuous only and so on. This combination of anti-divine force is coming into existence and threatening the very cultural life of man, churns the whole individual and then compels him to bring from within himself the sleeping divine. You see, he is compelled to bring out the divinity that is in him. And that way, it serves a purpose of compelling the human being to bring out the possibility of the divine that is dormant in man. And makes him evoke what you call gods. These are the titans. Now put it roughly for understanding's sake. The anti-divine element is Titan. The Asura, the hostile forces or titans. When the titans are in government or in possession of the world or the key positions, what man has to do is to evoke the gods. Gods are the ideals, truth, right, justice, sacrifice, love, or love of the country, or whatever truth. Well, freedom, democracy. They are the gods. Well, one evokes those gods and then he's prepared to die. Well, then those forces go down. So much of the higher force is able then to come down into life, you see. The advantage is that they get a run into life. Life becomes like that, geared up to a higher vibration. It has to be. You can't help it. So to meet the anti-divinity, a call to the divinity becomes imperative, and that helps the human being to bring out from within himself his higher potentialities. That's the negative service which they render to the human progress, you see. But we don't wish for it, but that is what it is. In Life Divine, there is one full chapter, origin of, the sons of darkness, and origin of evil and falsehood. Origin of falsehood and evil. If you have time, read that chapter. It's a very fine chapter. I had no time to go through it because only we dealt with the origin of ignorance. But next to it is a chapter of the origin of our falsehood and evil, you see. Why and how it arises. Life has got height and depth. Life has got a height why it can reach the absolute. It has got a depth which can go to the inconscient. So anything coming up from the inconscient level, well, if it insists on remaining inconscient, becomes anti-divine. And insists on keeping down the course of evolution to the inconscient, so to say, to the gravitational pull. And the human spirit has to go up. So there is a tussle, you see.
But used on just ordinary people that aren't possessed, then nonviolence is all right.
Yes, if they can do it, why not?
If it happens to be a place where it could be used effectively, which I know is very difficult, but
yes,
I've tried it.
Yes, in all conditions it is not easy to carry it out, and also to take up the right inner attitude, you see. It is possible to take up the right inner attitude, then it may be effective in 6-7 cases out of 10. Because you can then leave the burden of it to the divine. Really speaking, it's not only becoming non-violent. You see, instead of yourself acting and trying to do anything, you retire and leave it to the divine. That will be far, in a degree, better than even non-violence. You don't react, but you invoke the divine to react and do what is proper. Probably the result might be much better than either if you had reacted or if you had merely resorted to what you call non-violence.
Oh, well, just passive resistance, usually doesn't have very much effect.
No, naturally not, because you are only withdrawing or keeping like that. But if you allow the divine, if you pass it over to the divine and say, well, I don't want to do it because I will do it egoistically, so I better not do anything. But if anything true is to happen, let the divine do what it likes. I don't know what to do because I may do wrong. So let the divine do what is good for the situation. Well, probably it might have much better effect than if you had only had non-violence. Because the divine acts. It's wrong to think that divine cannot or does not act. It acts. And it can act unless your whole belief is founded on ignorance. Faith is founded on ignorance. If you say that divine must do something which is against common sense or against, yes, that's it, or to satisfy some ego impulse, then naturally divine does not confirm such faith. But it always acts. So when you are sincerely non-violent and handing over the charge of the thing to the divine, well, you have done the highest good that you can to yourself and to the other man. Highest good, because something that would happen would be good for the whole situation. Good not in the sense of human good, but spiritually good, I mean. You can look at it from one point of view like this, that India's resource to non-violence, not very perfect and wonderful, I must say, I know it from inside, but still, as a whole collectivity, they carried out as much as they could humanly under the situation. Well, one good result of it is that they have good relation with the British Empire. One good relation of it is, you see, that they have very good relation with the British Empire. Otherwise, when a nation gets out of somebody's hand, well, afterwards you say that you better keep off. There is no Anglophobia in England, in India today. Nobody hates an English. He is quite safe in the most distant village in a mountain or wherever he may be. He may be alone. Nobody bothers him. They themselves, there are more Englishmen now in India than there were when the British were there, you know. There are actually. There are more Englishmen today in India. It is conscious of what is happening.
I mean, in the future.
Yes. Yes, in the future, you see, for man's mind, the time is divided between past, present and future. But in the higher mind or in the cosmic mind, the whole course is like that scene. Just as the road from here to New York, you don't see now, but when you are on the road, well, the road is revealing itself to you. It's opening out.
And it never interfered, has it? Does it have anything to do with our human destiny?
It has. It is that which is working, isn't it? In our mind.
Yes.
In our mind. You are talking of cosmic mind, is it not?
Yes.
Yes. Well, the cosmic mind is each human being is the human mind working in detail. Cosmic mind working on an individual's, stand. That's all.
Well, doesn't it have something to do with our collective consciousness?
Also, yes.
It doesn't function only.
No. It has world forces, world ideas, world impulses, world will. And it is that which casts the psychology or the values of the collective life. You see, for instance, how did communism come? It is not one man who was bringing it, no. The thought was coming, and somebody opened, it came down, and he gave a form. In giving the form, he may give a deformation. He may add from his own personality what the world idea did not even intend, but the idea came from there, that's all. It is nobody's creation here, nothing happens here. It comes from there. From the cosmic mind, the world idea, seeking expression, is pressing upon the belt of mind, so to say. And when it finds an opening, it goes down.
Mm-hmm.
Then it finds a formulation, then he makes a theory, he makes a, political, what you call a principle or a program, and then he wants other people to accept, and the idea goes from people to people. That's how it catches hold of mind and tries to actualize itself in life. You see? It becomes something realized on the plane of matter afterwards if it goes straight. If it does not, it goes through like that. Like a flood that is coming and it flows wherever the channel allows it to go. That's all. It may be obstructed, then it will hold up, then it will break through, go, and like that it happens. It doesn't go straight, except that which the divine brings into the cosmic world directly from above, which is quite rare.
Well, then we could say that history has a spiritual significance behind it.
That is what Savitri comes to. Savitri is the rendering of the spiritual significance of evolution. Savitri is the unfolding of the meaning of evolution in terms of man's growth. What is the significance of history? Then they great Savitri. That is what man's history comes to. It's a growth from unconsciousness to the supreme consciousness. And it has yet to reach that goal, but it shows that is the direction.
In relation to our world situation today, there may come pacifists who think that we should entirely disarm and not have armament. How would you explain how would nonviolence affect this?
See, it has not yet become a recognized political weapon.
No.
But it has been recognized as a value in ethical life and in international life a little bit more than it was before. Before 20 years it had no status. Now it has a status in the sense that as far as possible avoid a clash. It's not pure enunciation of non-violence, but it is that maintain peace as far as possible, because breaking of peace is fraught with very serious consequences. And there is a platform given so as to vent out one's own ideas and represent oneself and go and talk to the other man across the table to find out what he means, and let half a dozen also know what you mean, what the other fellow means, and then world opinion also try to influence the situation to keep peace. But if non-violence will come, it will have to come on the basis of essential divinity of man. That I have written a big passage, we have finished that last week or 10 days back, that when man realizes that man is divine and sacred, then life will become sacred.
And we're not there. Of course,
You see, yes, we are little far from it now.
Yes.
So what would happen practically as the situation seems to develop is that UNO can give a very good platform for maintaining peace. And on the basis of maintaining peace, there can be reduction of armaments. A gradual reduction, you see, reduction of armament. And that might ultimately, after 20 or 25 or 50 years, might lead to complete disarmament. It can, it is not impossible. If world state in the meantime comes into being and UNO becomes, so to say, not a federation of the world to govern the world, not a world state, but a federation. And the federation has a power of legislation, deciding who is wrong, what one must do in order to maintain peace, and yet arrange injustice or conflict or interest and so on. It could become more dynamic then. That is, nations will have to cease to be sovereign. That is true. It has already ceased to a great extent. Nobody can do what he likes now. No nation can say, we will kill somebody. No, they can't kill. So the sovereignty of nation is already being limited. It will have to be limited still more. If it gets limited, then there is more chance of disarmament coming in. And if that comes in, Sri Aurobindo pleads that this must be accompanied by the growth of this feeling of oneness of a family first, and then divinity of man. That we are all one, this world is one, and whoever belongs to the world is a member of a family, so to say. And one must feel that this is a one world in which we are living, in spite of the variations which are good and necessary to maintain. Variations of culture or social life or belief or action or dress or outer behavior are good as variations, because the whole world became uniform, it will be very dull. In fact, the world would cease to be very interesting. So it is good that variation is there. Variation is not necessarily, separative or creative division or conflict. Variation is good, but it must be on the basis that one world. And one must feel the one world. Mothers long ago told that the world is already one. Man has to realize it, that it is one, that's all. And then many problems by this feeling itself will go. If this feeling becomes active in group life, then conflicts will become less. Points of conflict will resolve very much, very much. It's not by constitution that this will come more easily. It is by growth of this feeling of one family and one divine entity in all. Well, that will really bring in the solid ground of human unity. Then disarmament will become almost easy to carry out. But as actually man is constituted, there is always fear of this hostile, as we were talking, you see, the anti-divine element. We were just talking to her about it. You see, if somebody happens to have something in him and he can explode out, well, one has to be ready for that. Anti-divine element breaking anything higher coming into life will be always a risk. It is less today. I don't say that it is imminent, but there is a chance. And a 20 or 25% chance also is a good chance. So one has to be guarded against it.
What are we going to do without police forces? That should be easier, shouldn't it?
No, that is more difficult for us than disarmament, I think.
Well, that's all the way you look at it.
Then you go in for an anarchic state, anarchic in the sense of self-regulated society.
Yes, but I mean,
Then there will be no government necessary,
well, I mean,
no state.
it's obvious that political action is never going to accomplish this disarmament. I mean, I think it's quite obvious. It's going to have to be a spiritual thing, not political action has failed. And if we have this spirit of comedy between nations with their different characteristics and different interests, why shouldn't we also have internal peace within our own organization? Why should we have to have police forces?
No, if you have not got criminals, it's all right.
Huh?
If you're not people with criminal tendencies, it's quite good.
If everyone has the same gear ratio, in other words.
Well, how
Spiritual
can you,
gear ratio.
well, you say this, but how can you disassociate a national tendency from a personal tendency? I mean, in other words, how can you say, well, we can have peace amongst nations and not have first a situation where we have peace amongst men?
No, there is peace. It's only the possibility of somebody not only breaking the peace but behaving unsocial or antisocial element, you see. I know cases in which ladies passing with a purse, well, the fellow simply snatches the purse in New York or any place.
Well, yes, but aren't we going to?
Now,
I mean, at the
now
same-
if you have such people, then you have to have police. What can you do?
Well,
An old lady can't protect herself also, you can't blame her. There are cases like that, you know.
They have had primitive societies that didn't have police, but they were small and they were at a stage where there wasn't
You create a complex culture and then you have to pay for complexity.
It would mean, Tommy, that everyone would have to then rise to a high level of this awareness.
well, the only thing is this, that if this is going to come through inner growth, it seems to me this inner growth would also be equally evident in the conduction of our internal affairs.
But it's a relationship that squares in its ratio in different values
For instance-
and extends.
For instance, the idea of, you have the proposition today in international affairs of these completely uncivilized nations coming in today without any background whatsoever, and in the NATO organization having a voice in it that's equal to nations that are in the order of 5 or 6 orders of size and importance above them. And this is not only undemocratic, it's just it's unworkable. As long as such a situation obtains, I don't think that the NATO is ever going to be more than a sounding board for public opinion. No, the large nations certainly are going to sacrifice what they consider their own legitimate interests to some newly formed nation that hasn't got the size or the economic prosperity or the brain power or anything else the city of Phoenix has left.
Yeah, but that, was brought in to counterbalance the other force, on the side of the Russians or the communistic values. In other words, it was just, it was grown and brought in for a purpose of counterbalance.
Yeah, well,
we serve in that nature till it does evolve to our.
If, for instance, we were 150 years younger than we are right now, we could probably form 300 nations. Under the present system, it wouldn't be just one nation, it would be 300 nations. And this is one reason why I feel that the NATO at the present time is just not going to work. Because the nations that are large and representative are just not going to yield to a majority vote that's composed of 50 nations, which represent each one 1/1000th of 1% of the world.
It's an infinite.
But NATO has got how many members?
I don't know, but I mean, if they've gotten about 25 recently, which you add it all together, probably don't have the population or the potential or anything else of 40 of our states.
Don't you think it could be a step in the process, though, in the end step? No?
Well,
The
I think it is, but I think that the one thing that I feel, and one reason that I'm so interested in this approach to the thing is that I don't feel man in his present state is going to get to first base the way they're going. It must be accomplished through a worldwide spiritual infusion, which is going to have remarkable changes. I mean, in other words, this is probably the best thing.
But there may be a very drastic change on bottom. I think there will be, in my own thinking. A very drastic step in man's development that's going to be very revealing. You see, it'll be more revealing in the atomic bomb.
Oh, I think so too. But I mean, this is what's going to come first, and then this other stuff is going to come. This is, and I think it's I mean, in other words, I think the principle's good. This does right now is to keep it before the public eye and probably to impress on more people the futility of the present direction we're taking. We're just not going. We've got ourselves in such a mess that we can't disarm. If we disarm tomorrow, we'd have a depression that lasted 50 years.
Sure, that's right.
Everybody knows it. They knows anything about the economy of this country. And this is just a terrible state to be in. Every one of us will be out looking for food here tomorrow. We'll disarm.
Oh, yeah.
It's just a social monster right now.
That is what one of the Tahoe, when I was there, one boy said that we must throw all our equipment into the sea.
This is a
Technical block. It was talking, you were discussing the point, and Tahoe, one of the young boys, 16 or 17, and I told him, you know what you are talking. But the feeling, I mean, the way in which he was trying to look at it, is as it were, it was something which was so bad that all equipment is thrown, nothing will happen. I said, well, something terrific may happen. Well, nobody comes in, even your economic depression might be.
Of course, that's one of the reasons it's been probably the most practical thought to replace the armament thing is a space program. In other words, wasting money on something else.
That's what I'm saying. But just a step in another direction.
But, and that's one of the probably one of the best reasons for having a large spaceport. It uses the same kinds of talents and normally used on larger programs. And doesn't do any harm.
Well, it is bringing us into a closer awareness of what might constitute a realm in another division or the cycle of planets.
Yes, I think it may.
It's possibly necessary, though, Tom, for man's development, even though it looks very stupid to you and I.
Well, I think if we spent more time looking into the hobby, that's what I'll just.
What's the person's relationship and man's awareness is to.
I'm in this business, and I can say that the personal relationships have not improved.
We are all dispersing. We are in the point of dispersing.